Get your dirty hands off my Louis Vuitton! The shriek tore through the hushed elegance of the first-class cabin, freezing every passenger in the middle of stowage. Leora Montgomery didn't just believe she was entitled to the empty seat beside her. She believed she was the queen of the sky. She looked at the man standing in the aisle, a tall black man in a comfortable nondescript hoodie, and sneered, assuming he was lost from economy. She didn't know that the man, Ingrid Wallace, wasn't just a passenger. He was the man who had signed the acquisition papers for the entire airline exactly 45 minutes ago. When she refused to move her bag, she triggered a chain of events that wouldn't just ruin her trip. It would cancel the flight, bankrupt her reputation, and serve a plate of karma so cold it would freeze the blood in her veins. This is the story of how a $5,000 bag cost a woman her entire life. The air inside the cabin of Flight 492, departing from JFK International Airport to London Heathrow, smelled of sanitized lemon and expensive leather. It was the specific scent of exclusivity that Ingrid Wallace usually found comforting, but today it just smelled like exhaustion. Ingrid adjusted the strap of his worn leather satchel on his shoulder. He had been in boardrooms for 36 hours straight. The merger between his logistics firm, Wallace Global, and the struggling carrier, Stratford Airlines, had been a nightmare of red tape and ego-stroking. But it was done. He technically owned the plane he was stepping onto, though nobody on the crew knew it yet. He had insisted on flying commercial rather than taking the corporate jet because he wanted to see the product from the inside. He wanted to know how Stratford treated its paying customers. He was about to find out. Ingrid scanned the row numbers. 2A. A window seat in the first row of first class. It was the prime spot, offering the most legroom and privacy. Or it would have, had it not been occupied by a fortress of luggage. Sitting in seat 2B, the aisle seat, was a woman who looked like she had been manufactured in a factory that specialized in arrogance. She was blonde, her hair coiffed into a stiff, immovable wave. She wore a cream-colored cashmere sweater that probably cost more than a Honda Civic, and she was currently scrolling through her phone with a look of intense boredom. But the problem wasn't the woman. It was her bag. A large, structured Louis Vuitton tote sat squarely in the middle of seat 2A, Ingrid's seat. It was buckled in, the seatbelt looped through its handles as if it were a toddler. Next to it, overflowing onto the armrest, was a fur-lined coat and a stack of glossy magazines. Ingrid took a deep breath. He didn't want conflict. He just wanted to sleep. "Excuse me," Ingrid said, his voice deep and calm, a rumble that usually commanded attention in boardrooms. The woman, Leora Montgomery, didn't look up. Her thumb continued to flick across her phone screen. She took a sip of her pre-flight champagne, the flute leaving a smudge of red lipstick on the rim. Ingrid cleared his throat, louder this time. "Mom?" Leora's head snapped up. Her eyes, icy blue and lined with sharp mascara, raked over Ingrid. She took in the grey hoodie, high quality but casual, the loose joggers and the sneakers. She didn't see the Patek Philippe watch peeking out from his sleeve. She only saw a black man in casual wear standing in the first-class section. "Economy is that way," she said, flicking her hand toward the back of the plane without making eye contact. "You're blocking the light." Ingrid blinked. He was used to being underestimated. It was actually his favorite business tactic, but this was blatant. "I'm not looking for economy," Ingrid said, stepping closer. "I'm looking for seat 2A, which currently seems to be occupied by your luggage." Leora finally turned her whole body toward him. She let out a dramatic, exasperated sigh, the kind one might use when a child spills juice on a rug. "This is not luggage," she hissed, pointing a manicured nail at the bag. "This is a limited edition Capucinus, and it is fragile. I paid for 2 seats so I wouldn't have to be crowded by commoners. Check your ticket again. You're probably in 22A, not 2A. It's a common mistake for people like you." "People like me?" Ingrid asked, his voice dropping an octave. The temperature in the cabin seemed to drop with it. "Yes, people who can't read," Leora spat. "Now move along. I'm waiting for the flight attendant to bring me a refill, and you are cluttering my view." Ingrid reached into his pocket and pulled out his boarding pass. He held it out, steady and clear. Ingrid Wallace. Seat 2A, first class. "The ticket says 2A, Ingrid said. "I suggest you unbuckle the bag and place it in the overhead bin or under the seat in front of you, where it belongs." Leora laughed. It was a harsh, barking sound. "You must have printed that off some scam website. There is no way the airline put you next to me. I am a Diamond Medallion member. I know the CEO of this airline personally." Ingrid's eyebrows shot up. "Is that so?" "Yes," she lied smoothly, turning back to her phone. "So if you don't want security to drag you off this plane for harassment, I suggest you turn around and go find a seat near the toilets where you fit in." Ingrid stood his ground. He looked at the bag. He looked at Leora. He realized that this wasn't just about a seat anymore. This was a test of the culture he had just bought. "Ma'am," Ingrid said, leaning in slightly, his hands resting on the back of his own seat. "I'm going to ask you one last time. Please move the bag." "Or what?" Leora challenged, her eyes flashing. "You're going to steal it?" The accusation hung in the air, heavy and ugly. Several other passengers in first class had stopped settling in. An older man in 3B lowered his newspaper. A young woman in 1B took off her headphones. All eyes were on row 2. Ingrid didn't flinch. "No, I'm going to call the flight attendant, and we're going to see who actually determines where that bag goes." Leora scoffed. "Go ahead. Call her. Her name is Hannah. She knows better than to upset me." Ingrid pressed the call button above his head. The soft ding sounded like a ring announcer's bell. Round 1 was over. Round 2 was about to begin, and Leora Montgomery had no idea she was stepping into the ring with a heavyweight. Hannah, the flight attendant, bustled down the aisle with a practiced smile plastered on her face. She was young, perhaps in her mid-20s, and looked already exhausted, despite the flight not having taken off yet. She smoothed her navy blue uniform, the standard Stratford Airlines kit, and approached row 2. "Is there a problem here, Mr.?" Hannah looked at Ingrid, her smile faltering slightly as she took in the tension radiating between the 2 passengers. "Wallace," Ingrid supplied. "And yes, there is a problem. This passenger has placed her personal items in my seat and is refusing to move them." Hannah looked at the seat. The Louis Vuitton bag sat there like a crowned monarch. She looked at Leora, and a flicker of recognition and fear crossed her face. "Oh, Mrs. Montgomery," Hannah said, her voice taking on an overly polite, almost subservient tone. "It's good to see you again." "Hannah, finally!" Leora groaned, rolling her eyes. "This man is harassing me. He has a fake ticket and is trying to intimidate me into giving up the seat I paid for. I told him I bought 2 tickets." Hannah turned to Ingrid. "Sir, may I see your boarding pass?" Ingrid handed it over again. Hannah studied it. She scanned the QR code with her handheld device. The device beeped green. Valid. "The ticket is valid, Mrs. Montgomery," Hannah said gently. "Mr. Wallace is assigned to seat 2A. "That's impossible," Leora snapped. "I told the gate agent explicitly to block the seat next to me. I need the space. I have anxiety." "I understand," Hannah stammered. She was caught between a rock and a hard place. "But the flight is fully booked, Ma'am. We have a standby list a mile long. If the system sold the seat, we have to fill it." Leora unbuckled her seatbelt and stood up, towering over Hannah in her heels. She got right in the flight attendant's face. "Listen to me," Leora whispered, though it was loud enough for Ingrid to hear. "I don't care what the system says. I spend $50,000 a year with this airline. My husband is an attorney for the city. If you make me move my bag to sit next to him, I will personally ensure you are scrubbing toilets in the terminal by tomorrow morning. Do you understand me?" Hannah paled. She looked at Ingrid, then back at Leora. She was young, likely new, and terrified of a complaint from a Diamond member. She turned to Ingrid, her expression pleading. "Sir," Hannah said softly, "look, we have a very uncomfortable situation here. Mrs. Montgomery is a very frequent flyer with us." "And I am a passenger with a ticket," Ingrid said, his voice hardening. "Are you asking me to give up my seat?" "No, not give up," Hannah said quickly. "But we have a lovely seat in premium economy. Row 10. It has extra legroom. I can give you free drink vouchers. It would just de-escalate the situation." Ingrid stared at her. He couldn't believe it. The staff was bending the knee to a bully. This was the rot in the company he had suspected. They prioritized the loud and the entitled over the right and the just. "Let me get this straight," Ingrid said, loud enough for the cabin to hear. "You want me to move to a cheaper seat, which I did not pay for, so her handbag can have a first-class experience?" "It's for the safety and comfort of the flight," Hannah lied, her face flushing red. "Please, sir, don't make this difficult." "I'm not the one making it difficult," Ingrid said. He gestured to Leora, who was smirking triumphantly. "She is violating federal aviation regulations by refusing to stow carry-on luggage. You know that. I know that." "He's aggressive," Leora shouted suddenly, clutching her pearls in a performance worthy of daytime soap operas. "Oh my God, I feel threatened. Hannah, get the pilot, get security. He's scaring me." Ingrid didn't move a muscle. He crossed his arms over his chest. "I haven't raised my voice. I haven't touched anyone. I just want my seat." "Sir, you need to come with me," Hannah said, her voice trembling but firm now. She had made her choice. She was siding with the status, not the truth. "We can't have this disruption. If you don't move to row 10, I will have to ask the captain to remove you." Ingrid looked at Hannah. He felt a pang of pity for her, mixed with disappointment. She was weak. "Go ahead," Ingrid said calmly. "Get the captain. In fact, I insist on it." Leora laughed, settling back into her seat and patting her bag. "You're done, buddy. You're so done. I hope you like the no-fly list." Hannah hurried toward the cockpit, the curtain swishing behind her. The cabin was dead silent. From across the aisle, the older man in 3B, a heavy-set guy with a thick mustache, leaned over. "Son," he whispered, "just take the row 10 seat. That witch isn't worth it. She's poison." Ingrid turned to him and offered a small, confident smile. "I appreciate it. But I don't run from bullies. And I certainly don't let luggage dictate where I sit." "Suit yourself," the man muttered, shaking his head. "But the captain on this flight? That's Captain Miller. He's an old-school hard-ass. He doesn't tolerate delays." "Good," Ingrid said, turning his gaze back to the cockpit door. "I want him to see exactly what's happening on his plane." A moment later, the cockpit door opened. A man in a pristine uniform with 4 gold stripes on his shoulders stepped out. Captain Miller. He was a silver-haired man with a jaw like granite and eyes that looked like they had seen everything. He adjusted his cap and walked into the cabin, Hannah trailing nervously behind him. Leora perked up, putting on her best damsel in distress face. "Captain, thank God! This man is terrorizing me!" Captain Miller stopped at row 2. He looked at Leora. He looked at the bag. He looked at Ingrid. "Problem, gentlemen?" "And lady?" Miller asked, his voice a gruff baritone. "He won't leave," Leora said. "I have anxiety, I paid for the extra space, and he's refusing to follow crew instructions." Miller turned his steel-grey eyes to Ingrid. "Is that true? Did the flight attendant give you an instruction?" "She asked me to move to premium economy to accommodate a handbag," Ingrid said. "I refused." Miller looked at Hannah. "Is the bag ticketed?" "Well, she said she bought 2 seats," Hannah stammered. "I asked if it was ticketed on the manifest," Miller barked. Hannah checked her device. She hesitated. "No, sir. The seat 2A is ticketed to Mr. Wallace. Mrs. Montgomery is only ticketed for 2B. The silence that followed was deafening. Leora's smirk faltered for a fraction of a second. "So," Miller said slowly, "we have a passenger with a valid ticket, and a passenger with a handbag." "I am a diamond medallion," Leora interjected. "I know the CEO." Miller looked at Leora with profound disinterest. "I don't care if you know the Pope, ma'am. Federal regulations state all carry-on items must be stowed for takeoff. If you bought a seat for the bag, you'd have a ticket. You don't." Ingrid felt a surge of relief. Finally, competence. But then Miller turned to Ingrid. "However," the captain continued, "my flight attendant tells me you are causing a disturbance. You're agitating the other passengers, and I run a tight ship. We are already 10 minutes behind schedule." Miller sighed, checking his watch. "I don't have time to referee a kindergarten fight. Sir, take the upgrade to premium economy. We'll refund your ticket difference. Just sit down so we can push back." Ingrid felt the blood rush to his ears. Even the captain just wanted the path of least resistance. "Captain," Ingrid said, his voice low and dangerous, "if you move me, you are making a mistake. A very expensive mistake." "Is that a threat?" Miller stepped closer, his chest puffing out. "It's a fact," Ingrid said. "I bought this seat. I am sitting in this seat." "Get him off!" Leora screeched. "He threatened the captain. That's a federal offense. Arrest him!" Miller's face turned red. He pointed a finger at Ingrid's chest. "Grab your things. You're off the flight. Now." Ingrid looked at the finger pointing at him. Then he looked at Leora, who was grinning like a Cheshire cat. "Fine," Ingrid said. He didn't argue. He didn't shout. He simply reached up, grabbed his satchel from the overhead bin, and slung it over his shoulder. He looked at Miller. "I'll get off. But you should know, this flight isn't going to London." "Get off my plane!" Miller growled. Ingrid walked down the aisle, head held high. As he passed the galley, he paused and looked at Hannah. "You had a choice, Hannah. You made the wrong one." He stepped off the plane and into the jet bridge. The heavy door swung shut behind him. Inside the cabin, Leora clapped her hands. "Finally! Good riddance to bad rubbish." She patted her Louis Vuitton bag. "You're safe now, baby." Captain Miller returned to the cockpit, annoyed but satisfied he had kept his schedule. "Prepare for pushback," he mumbled to his co-pilot. But in the terminal, Ingrid Wallace wasn't walking to the exit. He was walking to a quiet corner of the gate area. He pulled out his phone. He didn't call customer service. He didn't call a lawyer. He dialed a number saved in his contacts as Operations Control Global Director. "This is Ingrid Wallace," he said into the phone. "Authorization code Alpha 9 Zulu King. Yes, I'm at JFK, flight 492. He watched through the glass as the tug began to push the plane back. "Cancel it," Ingrid said. "Sir?" the voice on the other end asked, confused. "You heard me. Ground the plane. Immediate maintenance audit. Pull the certification for the crew. Flight 492 is cancelled effective immediately." Ingrid hung up. He watched the plane stop moving. He watched the jet bridge begin to extend back toward the door. Karma wasn't coming on a slow boat. It was coming on a private jet, and it was about to land right on Leora Montgomery's head. The sensation of a plane pushing back from the gate is distinctive. It is a lurch, a rumble, and then the smooth, backward glide that signals the beginning of a journey. For the 300 passengers on Flight 492, that sensation lasted exactly 45 seconds. Then, with a jarring thud that spilled coffee in row 12 and made Leora Montgomery gasp, the aircraft stopped dead on the tarmac. The hum of the engines, which had just begun to spool up into a high-pitched whine, cut out abruptly. The cabin fell into an eerie, pressurized silence, broken only by the confused murmurs of passengers. In seat 2B, Leora let out a huff of annoyance. She checked her diamond-encrusted watch. "Unbelievable," she muttered to no one in particular, though she made sure the young woman in 1B could hear her. "First the riffraff, now this? If we sit here for more than 10 minutes, I am demanding compensation miles." She stroked the leather of her Louis Vuitton bag, which still occupied seat 2A, the victor of a battle that had ended with a man's expulsion. "Don't worry," she cooed to the bag. "Just a little traffic." Inside the cockpit, however, the atmosphere was far from annoyed. It was frantic. Captain Miller stared at the flight computer. Every system was green. The plane was mechanically perfect. Yet, the ground control voice in his headset had been unequivocal. "Stratford 492, hold position immediately. Do not, I repeat, do not start engines. You are ordered to return to the gate." "Tower, this is 492, Miller barked into the mic. "We are cleared for departure. My board is green. What is the problem? Traffic?" "Negative, 492. This comes from corporate dispatch. A code red stop order. Return to gate B14 immediately. Shut down." Miller froze. In 30 years of flying, he had never heard of a code red stop order coming from corporate after the doors were closed. That code was reserved for security threats or catastrophic mechanical failures discovered remotely. He looked at his first officer, a younger man named Davis, whose face had gone pale. "Code red?" Davis whispered. "Is there a bomb?" "I don't know," Miller gritted out. "But we don't argue with dispatch." Miller keyed the PA system. He tried to keep his voice steady, the confident pilot voice that calmed nervous flyers. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Miller. We've received an indication from the tower that requires us to return to the gate for a quick check. Probably just a sensor glitch or some paperwork they forgot to file. Should be just a few minutes. Sit tight." The plane lurched forward, towed back to the massive glass terminal it had just left. Back in first class, Leora rolled her eyes so hard it hurt. "Paperwork," she scoffed. "Incompetence is what it is. I bet that man did something. He probably called in a fake threat just to spite me." As the jet bridge reconnected with a heavy metallic clank, the seatbelt sign dinged off. But the door didn't just open for a mechanic. The heavy cabin door swung open, and 3 people marched onto the plane. They weren't mechanics. They were wearing high-visibility vests over sharp suits, carrying clipboards and radios. The lead woman, a severe-looking operations manager named Sarah Jenkins, walked straight to the cockpit, bypassing the bewildered flight attendants. Hannah, the flight attendant who had sided with Leora, stepped forward nervously. "Excuse me? We have passengers on board. You can't just—" "Crew is relieved of duty," Sarah said, without breaking stride. She didn't even look at Hannah. "Get your bags." A ripple of shock went through the cabin. Passengers began to stand up, craning their necks. "Relieved of duty?" someone whispered. Are we getting a new pilot?" Moments later, Captain Miller burst out of the cockpit, his face a mask of fury and confusion. "What is the meaning of this? You can't ground a flight on a whim, Jenkins. I have a schedule." "It's not a whim, Miller," Sarah Jenkins replied, her voice carrying through the quiet first-class cabin. "The order came from the top. The flight is cancelled." "Cancelled?" Leora Montgomery shrieked. She unbuckled her belt and stood up, her expensive coat falling to the floor. "You cannot cancel this flight. I have a gala in London tomorrow night. My dress is in the hold." Sarah Jenkins finally looked at the passengers. She picked up the cabin interphone, her voice echoing through the entire plane. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the inconvenience. Flight 492 is officially cancelled due to an operational audit. All passengers must deplane immediately with their personal belongings. Customer service agents are waiting at the gate to assist with rebooking." The cabin erupted. 300 people groaned, shouted, and cursed simultaneously. It was the sound of vacations ruined, business meetings missed, and funerals unattended. "This is insane," Leora yelled, grabbing her Louis Vuitton bag. She rounded on Hannah, who looked on the verge of tears. You said everything was fine. This airline is a joke." "Ma'am, please," Hannah sniffled. "I don't know what's happening. I am not getting off this plane until I speak to someone in charge," Leora declared, planting her feet. Sarah Jenkins stepped up to Leora. She wasn't intimidated. She was tired, and she had a job to do. "Ma'am, this aircraft is now a restricted zone. If you do not deplane, airport police will remove you. And I don't think they'll be as gentle with that handbag as you are." Leora turned purple. She looked around for support, but the other passengers were too busy grabbing their bags and grumbling to care about her tantrum. Even Captain Miller was busy shoving his flight bag together, looking like a man who had just been told his house was on fire. "Fine," Leora spat. "But heads are going to roll for this. Mark my words. I'm going to sue this airline for every penny it has." She stomped down the aisle, her heels clicking aggressively. She clutched her bag to her chest like a shield. As she exited the plane and walked up the jet bridge, the cold air of the terminal hit her. It wasn't just a cancelled flight. It felt personal. And as she burst into the gate area, ready to scream at the first uniform she saw him. Ingrid Wallace. He was sitting in one of the waiting area chairs right across from the gate door. He wasn't on his phone. He wasn't in line at the service desk. He was just sitting there, legs crossed, hands folded in his lap, watching the door with a calm, almost serene expression. He looked like a man who had been waiting for a show to start. The gate area of JFK's Terminal 4 was a scene of controlled chaos. The 300 passengers spilling off Flight 492 were forming a mob around the small service desk, where 2 terrified gate agents were typing furiously. Voices were raised. Babies were crying. The air was thick with the scent of stress and stale airport coffee. Leora Montgomery, however, didn't join the line. She saw Ingrid Wallace sitting there, looking smug, in her opinion, and something inside her snapped. In her mind, the sequence of events was clear. The man caused a scene. He was kicked off. And then, coincidentally, the flight was cancelled. He was the bad omen. He was the jinx. She marched over to him, her Louis Vuitton bag swinging on her arm like a weapon. "You!" she shouted, her voice cutting through the din of the crowd. Several heads turned. "This is your fault." Ingrid looked up slowly. His expression was unreadable. "My fault?" he asked, his voice smooth. "I thought I was just a man who couldn't read his ticket." "Don't play dumb with me," Leora hissed, standing over him. "You put some kind of curse on this flight, or you called in a fake tip to get back at me because you couldn't handle being told no. That's it, isn't it?" You're petty." "I am petty," Ingrid agreed, nodding thoughtfully. "But I didn't call in a fake tip. I don't break the law, Mrs. Montgomery." "Then why are you smiling?" she demanded. "Everyone here is miserable. My trip is ruined, and you're sitting here like you own the place." Ingrid stood up. He was tall, significantly taller than Leora, and for the first time, she felt a flicker of genuine intimidation. He didn't loom over her aggressively. He simply occupied his space with a confidence that money couldn't buy, though in his case, it certainly helped. "I'm smiling," Ingrid said, "because I'm curious to see how the airline handles a customer service crisis. It's educational." Before Leora could scream again, the double doors near the security checkpoint burst open. A man in a sharp, tailored navy suit, flanked by 2 security officers, strode into the gate area. He was older, distinguished, with silver hair and an aura of absolute authority. It was Robert Henderson, the regional director for Stratford Airlines. He was the man who ran the entire East Coast operation. He was the boss of the pilot. Leora's eyes lit up. She recognized authority when she saw it. This was her chance. She turned away from Ingrid and hurried toward Henderson, waving her hand. "Sir! Sir!" she called out, cutting off his path. "Are you in charge here?" Henderson stopped, blinking at the woman blocking his way. "I am the regional director. Yes." "Ma'am, if you'll excuse me, I have a critical situation." "You certainly do," Leora interrupted, pointing a finger back at Ingrid. "My name is Leora Montgomery. I am a Diamond Medallion member. I demand an explanation. Your crew was incompetent, your pilot was rude, and that man over there," she jabbed her finger at Ingrid, "was harassing me and caused this whole mess. I want him arrested, and I want a private jet to London immediately." Henderson frowned. He looked past Leora, following her finger to where Ingrid was standing. The color drained from Henderson's face. His eyes widened. He completely ignored Leora's demands about a private jet. He physically sidestepped her, brushing past her expensive coat as if she were a piece of furniture. "Mr. Wallace," Henderson said, his voice breathless. He walked straight up to Ingrid and extended his hand, bowing his head slightly in a gesture of profound respect. "Sir, I came as fast as I could. I was in a meeting in Terminal 1 when the order came through." Leora froze. Her mouth hung open. She turned around slowly. The regional director wasn't arresting the man in the hoodie. He was apologizing to him. Ingrid shook Henderson's hand firmly. "Robert, good to meet you. I wish it were under better circumstances." "I am mortified, sir," Henderson said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "When I saw the acquisition memo this morning, I hope to give you a formal tour next week. I had no idea you were flying commercial today. If you had known, I would have been treated like a king," Ingrid said, his voice carrying to the silent crowd that had begun to gather. "But I didn't want to be treated like a king, Robert. I wanted to see how you treat regular people, or rather, how you treat people you think are regular." Leora's brain was misfiring. "Acquisition memo. Sir, Captain Miller and Hannah, the flight attendant, had just walked up to the group, dragging their flight bags. They stopped dead in their tracks, seeing their boss, Henderson, looking terrified in front of the man they had just kicked off the plane. "Mr. Henderson?" Captain Miller asked, his voice wavering. "What's going on? Who is this?" Henderson spun around, his face turning red with anger. "Who is this?" he repeated, his voice rising to a shout. "Captain Miller, you are looking at the new owner of Stratford Airlines." The silence that fell over Gate B was heavier than lead. Leora felt her knees go weak. She grabbed the back of a chair to steady herself. "Owner? she whispered. Henderson continued, his voice echoing in the terminal. "This is Mr. Ingrid Wallace, CEO of Wallace Global. As of 2 p.m. today, he owns 51% of this company. He is your employer. He is the man who signs your checks." Captain Miller looked at Ingrid. He looked at the hoodie. He looked at the sneakers. He looked at the man he had threatened with the police. The blood left his face so fast. He looked like a corpse. "Mr. Wallace," Miller stammered. I didn't know." "Sir, I was just following protocol for a disruptive passenger." Ingrid took a step forward. He didn't yell. He spoke with the quiet, crushing weight of an avalanche. "Protocol?" Ingrid asked. "I read your protocol manual, Captain. Section 4, paragraph 2. The safety and dignity of all passengers is paramount." "Tell me, Captain, was my dignity paramount when you threatened to arrest me because I wouldn't let a handbag take my seat?" Miller opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Ingrid turned his gaze to Hannah. The young flight attendant was trembling, tears streaming down her face. "And you?" Ingrid said softly. "You saw a valid ticket. You knew the rules, but you let fear of a status card outweigh your integrity. You chose the easy wrong over the hard right." Ingrid finally turned to Leora. She was shrinking, trying to make herself small behind her Louis Vuitton bag, which suddenly looked very heavy and very silly. "And Mrs. Montgomery," Ingrid said, a small, cold smile playing on his lips. "The woman who knows the CEO." Leora made a small squeaking noise. "I am the CEO," Ingrid said, "and I don't recall us ever meeting." I meant the old CEO," Leora stammered, her voice high and thin. "It was a misunderstanding." "Sir, Mr. Wallace, I was just having a bad day. My anxiety." "Your anxiety is about to get a lot worse," Ingrid said. He turned back to Henderson. "Robert, here is what is going to happen. I want a full audit of this flight crew. Suspended pending investigation, but that's internal." Ingrid pointed at the crowd of confused passengers. "These people are stranded because of the incompetence I witnessed. Every single passenger on this flight gets a full refund, a $1,000 voucher, and a hotel room for the night, on my personal dime." A cheer went up from the crowd. People started clapping. However, Ingrid raised a hand, silencing them. He looked directly at Leora. "There is one exception." He walked over to the gate agent's computer. He typed something into the keyboard. He didn't need a password. He owned the system. "Mrs. Montgomery," Ingrid said, looking up from the screen, "I am exercising my right as the proprietor of a private business. You are hereby banned from Stratford Airlines and all its subsidiaries. Lifetime ban, effective immediately." "You can't do that," Leora screeched, the shock momentarily replaced by her natural entitlement. "I have a return ticket. I have miles, millions of miles." "Your account has been closed," Ingrid said coolly. "Your miles are voided, and since we are the only carrier with a direct flight to London from this terminal, I suggest you start walking to the taxi stand. It's a long swim." "This is illegal. I'll sue you," Leora yelled, looking around for allies. But the crowd was laughing. The people she had looked down on were now laughing at her. "You can try," Ingrid said. "But my lawyers are better than your husband, and they have video." He pointed to the security cameras in the ceiling. "Security." Ingrid nodded to the 2 officers standing by Henderson. "Please escort this non-passenger out of the secure area. She is trespassing." The 2 officers stepped forward. One of them, a burly man with a no-nonsense expression, took Leora's arm. "Let go of me!" Leora shrieked, flailing. Her Louis Vuitton bag slipped from her arm. It hit the floor with a heavy thud, spilling open. A bottle of duty-free perfume rolled out and shattered, filling the air with a sickly, sweet smell. "My bag!" she screamed. "Let's go, Mum," the officer said, dragging her away. As she was hauled off, screaming threats and obscenities, Ingrid Wallace picked up his simple leather satchel. He looked at Captain Miller and Hannah, who were still standing there, waiting for the axe to fall. "Go home," Ingrid said to them. "We'll talk on Monday, if you still have jobs." He looked at Henderson. "Get these people to hotels, Robert. I'm going to find a burger. First-class food is overrated anyway." Ingrid Wallace walked away, the hero of Terminal 4, leaving behind a shattered perfume bottle and a shattered ego. But the story wasn't over. Leora Montgomery wasn't the type to go down quietly. She had one card left to play, and she was about to play it in the court of public opinion. She didn't know that Ingrid Wallace was also a master of that game. The back seat of the Uber smelled of pine air freshener and stale cigarettes, a sensory assault that Leora Montgomery would normally have refused to tolerate. But today, she didn't care about the smell. She cared about revenge. As the car crawled through the bumper-to-bumper traffic on the Van Wyck Expressway, Leora wiped the mascara streaks from her cheeks. She pulled a compact mirror from her purse, the purse that had survived the fall, unlike her dignity, and fixed her hair. She practiced her expression in the mirror, wide eyes, trembling lip, the perfect picture of a traumatized victim. She opened TikTok on her phone. She had a modest following of about 5,000 people, mostly other wealthy socialites and women who envied her lifestyle blog, Leora's Luxury. But she knew how the algorithm worked. Rage bait sold. She hit record. "Hi, everyone," Leora whispered, her voice cracking theatrically. I don't even know if I can say this without crying. I was just thrown off a plane, physically assaulted, by a man who claimed to be the owner." She sniffed, wiping a dry eye. "I was in first class, minding my own business, when this huge man in a hoodie came up and started screaming at me. He tried to steal my bag. When I called for help, the flight attendants were too scared to do anything. And then, oh God, he had his security guards dragged me out of the terminal. He laughed at me. He broke my perfume. I'm stranded at JFK, bruised and terrified. Please, share this. We can't let men like this get away with abusing women just because they have money. Boycott Stratford Airlines. Help me." She added the hashtags, "Joe Boycott Stratford," "Joe's Women's Rights," "Joe Assault," and "Tor's Justice for Leora." She hit post. By the time she reached her penthouse in Manhattan's Upper East Side, the video had 50,000 views. By the time she poured herself a large vodka tonic, it had hit 500,000. The internet, reactive and hungry for a villain, took the bait. Comments flooded in. "This is disgusting. Who is this guy? Boycotting Stratford immediately. Sue them into the ground, Queen." Leora smiled as she scrolled. She watched the view counter tick up. 1.2 million. 1.5 million. Mainstream news outlets were starting to DM her. A producer from the Morning Beat asked for an exclusive interview. "You messed with the wrong woman, Ingrid Wallace," she toasted the empty room. "I'm going to take your little airline and turn it into ash." Meanwhile, in a quiet office in Midtown Manhattan, Ingrid Wallace was finishing his burger. He wiped his hands on a napkin and looked at the large monitor on the wall. On the screen was his chief of public relations, a sharp-eyed woman named Samantha. She looked concerned. "Sir, it's trending," Samantha said. "She's controlling the narrative. Stock for Stratford has dipped 2% in the last hour. People are calling for your resignation, and you haven't even officially taken the job yet. We need to issue a statement." Ingrid leaned back in his chair. He didn't look worried. He looked like a chess player who saw mate in 3 moves. "No statement, Samantha," Ingrid said. "Sir?" "Statements are for politicians who are trying to hide something," Ingrid said. "We don't need words. We have the truth." "She's claiming assault, Ingrid," Samantha pressed. "She says you broke her property and had her dragged out. It's her word against yours." "Is it?" Ingrid asked. He picked up his phone and dialed a number. "Robert?" "Yes." "I need the raw security footage from Gate B14 and get the onboard cabin video from Flight 492. The new A321s have cabin surveillance, don't they? Good. Send it to Samantha." Ingrid looked back at the screen. "Samantha, once you get those files, I want you to edit them. Do not cut anything out. Just sync them. Put her video on the left and the reality on the right. Side by side." "And then?" Samantha asked. "And then post it to the official company page," Ingrid said, his voice cold. "Caption it. The truth has no filter." "It's going to destroy her, Ingrid," Samantha warned. "The internet doesn't forgive liars." Ingrid stood up and walked to the window, looking out over the city lights. "She tried to destroy a flight attendant's career because of a handbag," Ingrid said. "She tried to ruin my reputation because I asked for a seat I paid for." "She wanted attention, Samantha. Let's give it to her. Let's make her the most famous woman in the world for exactly 15 minutes. The interview on the morning beat was scheduled for 8 a.m. the next day. Leora had bought a new outfit for the occasion, a modest, pale blue suit that made her look vulnerable yet dignified. She sat in the green room, her husband, Charles, pacing nervously beside her. Charles was a high-powered corporate attorney, a man who built his career on discretion. He didn't like this. "Leora, are you sure about this?" Charles asked, adjusting his glasses. "If you go on national TV and lie, and they have proof—" "Oh, stop it, Charles," Leora snapped. "They don't have proof. It was my word against his. And who is the public going to believe? A crying woman or a billionaire bully? We're going to get a settlement, buy that summer house in the Hamptons, and this will all blow over." A production assistant poked her head in. "Mrs. Montgomery, you're on in 2 minutes." Leora checked her makeup one last time. She walked onto the bright, polished set. The hosts, a man and a woman who usually smiled too much, looked serious today. They seated her on the plush couch. "Welcome back," the female host said to the camera. "We are sitting here with Leora Montgomery, the woman whose viral video about Stratford Airlines has shocked the nation. Leora, thank you for being here." "Thank you for having me," Leora said, putting a tremble in her voice. "It's been a nightmare." "Tell us what happened," the male host said. Leora launched into her rehearsed story. She embellished the details. Ingrid wasn't just rude, he was screaming profanities. The security guards weren't escorting her. They threw her to the ground. She was halfway through a tearful description of how her heirloom bag was destroyed when the female host touched her earpiece. The host's face changed. She looked confused, then shocked. She held up a hand. "I'm sorry to interrupt, Leora," the host said, her voice hardening. "But Stratford Airlines has just released a video statement. It's trending #1 worldwide right now. Our producers want to play it." Leora froze. "Video?" "Roll the clip," the male host said. The large screen behind Leora lit up. On the left side of the split screen was Leora's TikTok video, where she was crying about being assaulted. On the right side was the crystal-clear security footage from the gate. The world watched as Leora's TikTok voiceover said, "He had his guards throw me to the ground." Simultaneously, the security footage showed Ingrid calmly nodding to the officers. It showed Leora screaming, "Do you know who I am?" It showed her flailing her own arms, causing her bag to slip. It showed the officers gently holding her elbows as she tried to kick them. Then, the footage cut to the onboard camera. The audio was crisp. Leora, on video. "Get your dirty hands off my Louis Vuitton. Economy is that way." The studio audience gasped. Leora, on video. "I will personally ensure you are scrubbing toilets. I know the CEO." Ingrid, on video. "I am the CEO." The footage showed Ingrid calm, collected, and polite. It showed Leora as a screeching, entitled tyrant. It ended with a slow-motion shot of Leora intentionally knocking over a stanchion rope as she was led away. The clip ended. The studio was dead silent. Leora stared at the screen, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. She looked at the hosts. Their sympathy had evaporated. They looked at her with pure disgust. "So," the female host said, her voice icy. "That doesn't look like assault, Leora. That looks like you abusing a flight crew." It's doctored," Leora stammered, sweat beading on her forehead. "Deep fakes. AI. He's a billionaire. He can fake anything." "That footage is time-stamped and verified by airport security," the male host said. "Leora, you just accused a man of a serious crime on national television, and we all just saw you lie." "Cut the feed," Leora whispered, standing up. "I'm leaving." "Sit down, Mrs. Montgomery," a voice boomed from the side of the stage. Leora froze. Walking onto the set, uninvited but unopposed, was Ingrid Wallace. He was wearing a sharp charcoal suit, looking every inch the titan of industry. He didn't yell. He walked right up to the coffee table and placed a thick manila envelope on it. "Mr. Wallace?" the host asked, stunned. "We didn't know you were coming." "I was in the building," Ingrid said charmingly. He turned to Leora. She sank back into the couch, looking small and withered. "Leora," Ingrid said, "since you like to tell stories, I thought I'd share a few. That envelope contains a defamation lawsuit filed this morning. We are suing you for the damage done to the Stratford brand. The damages are estimated at $25 million. Leora made a choking sound. I don't have $25 million. "No," Ingrid agreed, "but your husband's firm does. Or did." Ingrid looked toward the wings of the stage where Charles was standing. Charles looked like he was about to vomit. "I spoke to the senior partners at Wolf & Associates this morning," Ingrid said. "They represent Wallace Global, or they did. I told them I couldn't possibly retain a firm whose senior partner's wife publicly slanders my companies. They had a choice: drop the account or drop the liability." Leora looked at Charles. Charles slowly shook his head, defeated. "Charles," she whispered. "I'm fired, Leora," Charles said, his voice hollow. "They voted me out an hour ago to save the client." Ingrid turned back to the camera. "Let this be a lesson. You can buy a first-class seat. You can buy a $5,000 bag. But you cannot buy class. And you certainly cannot buy the right to treat working people like garbage." He looked at Leora one last time. "Enjoy the walk home, Leora. I hear it's a nice day for a stroll." Ingrid walked off the set. The cameras stayed on Leora. She was weeping, but this time nobody believed her tears. The on-air light turned red, broadcasting her ruin to millions of homes across the country. But the karma wasn't done yet. The legal system was slow, but the internet was fast, and the internet had decided that Leora Montgomery was target number one. The fall of the House of Montgomery wasn't instantaneous. It was a public, agonizing dismantling. The defamation lawsuit filed by Wallace Global was a juggernaut. Ingrid Wallace didn't need her money, but he ensured the legal process revealed who she really was. During discovery, Leora's private messages were subpoenaed, exposing a history of abuse toward service workers and racist undertones. The court of public opinion shifted swiftly from mockery to absolute loathing. Her husband, Charles, filed for divorce 3 weeks after the disastrous interview. To save his own legal career, he had to cut ties with the woman who had become a social pariah. He kept the Manhattan penthouse in the settlement. Leora was left with nothing but legal fees that drained every cent she had. 6 months after the incident on Flight 492, Leora stood inside a cramped, dusty pawn shop in Queens. The air smelled of stale mothballs, a stark contrast to the first-class cabins she once demanded. She placed the Louis Vuitton Capucines bag on the scratched glass counter. The bag, the catalyst for her ruin, looked tired. "It's authentic," Leora said, her voice raspy. She hadn't slept well in weeks. "Limited edition, retails for $5,000. The shop owner, a gruff man named Eddie, barely looked up. He flipped the bag over, noting the scuff mark from the airport floor. "Yeah, but nobody wants this style anymore. It's got bad luck. It's the Leora bag. You carry this. People think you're a nightmare." Leora flinched. Her entitlement had become a viral meme. The luxury market for the bag had crashed because no one wanted the association. "How much?" she asked, gripping the counter. $400. $400, Leora choked. "I need at least $2,000. I have rent. I have a bus ticket to buy to my mother's house." $400, Eddie repeated, pushing the greasy bills across the glass. "Take it or leave it. I'm doing you a favor." Leora looked at the bag. It used to represent power and status. Now, it was just a piece of leather she couldn't afford to keep. She took the money, stuffing the bills into the pocket of her cheap thrift store coat. As she turned to leave, a news report on the shop's TV caught her eye. The headline read, "Stratford Airlines posts record profits." On screen, Ingrid Wallace stood at a podium, cutting a ribbon for a new terminal. Standing right beside him was Hannah, the flight attendant Leora had tried to destroy. Hannah looked radiant, promoted and happy. "Mr. Wallace?" a reporter asked. "What is the secret to this turnaround?" Ingrid looked directly into the camera. "We stopped focusing on the luxury of the seats and started focusing on the dignity of the people in them. Respect cannot be bought. It has to be earned." Leora turned away, a hard lump in her throat, and stepped out into the cold rain. She walked to the bus stop, clutching her $400. She wasn't waiting for a limousine. She was waiting for the Q424 bus. Suddenly, a massive city bus roared past the curb, splashing a wave of dirty gutter water onto the sidewalk. Leora gasped, soaked and freezing. As the bus pulled away, she saw the advertisement plastered on its side. It was a Stratford Airlines ad. The slogan, written in bold letters, read, "Don't let your baggage weigh you down." Leora Montgomery stood alone in the rain, stripped of her name, her wealth, and her pride. She had fought for a seat she didn't need and lost her place in the world. She boarded the crowded bus, moving to the back, and sat down next to a crying baby. She didn't complain. She simply closed her eyes, finally understanding the heavy price of the baggage she had carried for so long. Leora Montgomery's story is a brutal reminder that in the modern world, arrogance is a debt that is eventually collected with interest. She believed her status made her untouchable, but she failed to realize that true power lies in humility. Ingrid Wallace showed that a leader doesn't need to shout to be heard, and that the strongest person in the room is often the one who is willing to stand up for the weak. Leora lost her fortune, her marriage, and her reputation, all because she valued a leather bag more than a human being. It's a lesson that cost her everything. Wow, Talk about instant karma. It's satisfying to see justice served, but it's also a little scary how fast life can change just because of one bad decision. What do you think? Did Leora deserve to lose absolutely everything, or was the punishment too harsh? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story of justice and drama, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you haven't already, smash that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss a new story. We drop new videos every week. Thanks for watching. And remember, be kind to people, because you never know who you're talking to. See you in the next video.